Hello and welcome to PMBOK Guide 7th Turbo. It's a very quick review of the PMBOK Guide 7th edition to help those of you who are getting ready for the PMP exam to really understand what is in the book. I know lots of you have been reading the book, trying to get this down for your exam, but there's a simpler way of going through the material if you have already been through the process groups or practice guide or the PMBOK Guide 6th edition. So let's jump straight in and let me begin to show you what exactly this book is all about. So for those of you that are new to the channel, my name is Phil. I will be your friend, your host, your colleague, taking you through this journey to understand the content for your PMP exam success. I got certified in 2005. It has been 18 years and I've been in the business of helping people get certified. Those are my credentials on the screen. I've got various PMI certifications, so I've been there, done that. You're in great hands. What I advise you to do if you're getting ready for this exam is beef up your knowledge. It's really all about what you know, not about what you cram, because you could cram and still not know the intricacies of whatever you read. So it's really about understanding and knowing. That's key. Now, as we go through this journey, I want you to be aware that the PMBOK Guide 6th edition has a very different landscape. The PMBOK Guide 6th edition, as you can see here on the screen, is all about the initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling and closing. But the 7th edition has a more principle-based look from the 12 principles, stewardship, all the way on down to change. We'll talk about that later on today. The second piece of the puzzle, for those of you who have studied the 6th edition and are trying to get into the 7th, is really knowing that the knowledge areas, as we had it in the 6th edition, are now replaced by the performance domains. I'm going to go through the book a little bit with you so that you can make sense out of these domains. You also want to be aware that there's additional content that is in the appendices, the glossary, and the index, and you can find these in the PMI Standards Plus, the digital content platform. So there's a lot of stuff outside of what you may see in the physical book of the 7th edition that is still relevant. And that's why we have process groups, a practice guide that still refers to the processes and the knowledge areas and the process groups. So how do you tackle this behemoth? My suggestion, if you want to tackle this, is to just go for the big pieces of the 7th edition. Big piece number one is all of these things on the screen. Outcome, the overarching future state with all of the benefits, all of the value, all of the good things you're looking for, to have realized all of that and to get into the future and to have the expected goal, the expected vision achieved. Portfolio is a collection of projects, programs, and other work that are grouped together and managed to fulfill the company's strategic business objective. We have a product, we have programs, projects, and all of these definitions, which I won't go into, but I would advise you to understand. The one that I really want to hone in on is a system for value delivery. And the system for value delivery is front and center in the early pieces of PMBOK 7. When we talk about creating value, you got to understand that projects exist within a larger system, such as a governmental agency, an organization, or some other contractual arrangement. When we take a look here, you need to understand that various components such as portfolios, programs, projects, products, and operations can be used individually and collectively. And that's what we take a look at in this image of the system for value delivery. So when we talk about a system for value delivery, you need to understand we have portfolios. Within those portfolios, we could have programs such as what you see here. And then we can have within those programs projects. Or we could have standalone programs and projects that are standalone. On top of all of this, we could have operations, as you can see here. Now think about it. These exist internally and they exist in a company, but that company exists in a wider system, which is the external environment, which could be a state, it could be a country, it could be anything outside of the organization. So when you're taking a look at project management, in the lens of the 7th edition, you need to understand that you've got external environment, internal environment, the system itself, making the portfolios, programs, and projects and operations very relevant. And through that, we arrive at whatever our end goal is. I like to imagine this as an aquarium, right? And in the aquarium, you have different pieces, such as the portfolios, the big rocks, you got the programs, the smaller pieces of stone, the projects could be the pebbles, the operation is the lifeblood of the organization, it's the water, the outcome could be the plants, the lovely scenery for the fish, and the benefits are just what the fish get from being in that environment, a lot of happiness and a lot of joy just being in a really cool habitat. So I like thinking about the value delivery system like that because it helps me keep track of all the pieces. When you understand the value delivery system, the next thing is to understand the flow of the information. So you got the senior leadership communicating the strategy down to the portfolio. You've got the portfolio communicating the desired outcome, benefits, and value down to the programs and projects. You got those communicating the deliverables and support and maintenance information. And then you've got the fixes, the request for fixes going back to programs and projects, performance information and progress going back to portfolios, and portfolio performance information ultimately going back to senior leadership. And that's how you need to see the world of the value delivery system. When you have achieved that understanding, the next thing that I want you to take note of is the way projects evolve. And here is figure 2-4 with a sample product lifecycle. And in this image, you can see that programs start off with initial creation, we add more features, more additions, and then we get to the pinnacle here, which is really more like the product usage and the sales and the impact that it's made. It begins to plateau and then it starts going downwards. And this is the ultimate end of the product. There could be a series of projects to get the product to its highest state, but after a while, people use less and less of the product and it gets into retirement. And a great example of this will be like Adobe Flash. For those of you who remember Flash, the Swift files, they're not used anymore. You know, the browsers can't even open those anymore. And that's an example of how a product added a lot of value, but it got to maturity and ultimately decline and retirement. And all the other associated products that died as a result of Flash dying, that would be a good example. With that said, let's jump into the principles because that's what's next. I'm going to go through the principles very rapidly with you. The principles of project management, as espoused by the PMI for the very first time, you see this in the PMBOK Guide 7th edition. And at a high level, you can see the 12 principles. But let me give you the skinny of each one. Number 1, stewardship. Be a diligent, respectful, and caring steward. Operate with integrity, care, and trustworthiness. So, when you take a look at this question, you got to understand that compliance is part of being a steward. So the answer to this, for example, would be C. That takes us to number 2. Create a collaborative project team environment. It makes sense. You should get along. You should collaborate. You should encourage learning and alignment. These are things that you are expected to know even if you haven't read the 7th edition. The third principle is effectively engage with stakeholders. Be aware that stakeholders influence projects. Be aware that teams should serve stakeholders. They should engage them, and that enhances value across the board. Number 4 is all about value. Focus on value. If it's not valuable, don't do it. That's the summary of this. Now, in order for you to pull this off, you should understand what value is, understand the perspective of value. It could be realized at any point. It could be tangible or intangible, and it could be qualitative or quantitative. And we always focus on what the overarching outcome is because it's not just about delivering a deliverable. The question is, are we getting the value from it? The next one is systems thinking, and this is thinking as a project manager with a systemic view to everything. Understanding systemic interactions, the project is a system, you got to think holistically and understanding that systems constantly change and keeping up with that change. The next one is leadership. You got to demonstrate leadership behaviors. You got to be able to influence. It's not the same as authority. Understand that there are motivational differences and biases in a team, and you as a leader, you got to act with honesty, integrity, and ethical conduct. The next is tailoring. You got to tailor based on context. Each project is unique. Success is based on adapting, and you got to choose the most appropriate project management methods for the projects that you're working on. It's not enough for you to say, oh, there's so much good stuff, I'm going to put the whole kitchen sink in this project. No, don't do that. You need to choose the best ingredients for your project. The next one is quality. Build quality into processes and deliverables. Quality is all about fitness for use, conformance to requirements, and customer satisfaction. Number 9, complexity. Navigate complexity. You got human behavior, system behavior, ambiguity, uncertainty, and complexity can emerge at any point. But in order to deal with complexity, perhaps you need to break things down into smaller pieces, be more agile, be more adaptable. Moving on to number 10, it's all about risk. Risk specifically is uncertainty that matters. Uncertainty that can impact your project positively or negatively. And all we're saying here is optimize the response, choose the best response, and make sure you're utilizing the response for the good of the project. Number 11, adaptability and resiliency. Adaptability is all about one's propensity to morph, mold, and adapt to the world of change around you. In other words, it's being agile. So it's the ability to respond to change. Resiliency is the ability to absorb impacts and recover. So you want to be both. And one of the ways you can do this, again, is by being agile. That's how you deal with adaptability and resiliency. If you want staying power, if you want to be like the Netflix that survived, right? Not the blockbuster that collapsed, you need to be resilient. You need to have that staying power. And there are many things that enable you to be resilient. In addition to being agile, you also got to be innovative. Part of being agile is being innovative. They work hand in hand. Number 12 is change. Enable change to achieve the envisioned future state. Whatever the future state is, you got to be nimble. You got to be able to adapt. That's what I wanted to show you as far as the principles are concerned. Now we are going to wrap this up with a high-level breakdown of the domains. And regarding the domains, a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So for those of you who know integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resources, communication, risk, procurement, and stakeholder, the good news is you actually have an edge. And the edge that you have is all of the 6th edition is baked into the domains. Let's go over them one by one. First of all, you've got the principles as a base, and then you've got the stakeholder performance domain. Need I say more? It's all about intentionally engaging stakeholders. Then you have the team performance domain. This is all about your team, nurturing the team and adding value to the team. Then you have the development approach and life cycle. Unbeknownst to a lot of you, this is actually in the 6th edition, just not blown up as much. But in the 6th edition, before you get to integration, you have the talk about iterative, incremental, adaptive, agile. Which life cycle should we choose? Same thing. It's just blown out a little bit more. Then we have the planning performance domain. Again, planning is all of those 24 processes that we talk about. Developing plans, coming out with estimates of cost, estimates of schedule, resource requirements, all that stuff is planning. Then we talk about project work. There's part of project work that is baked into initiating, but we also have some project work that is executing as a whole, and specifically more in between resources and other things. Moving on to the delivery performance domain, this is all about delivering whatever it is that you're working on. Scope and quality, they come to play here. Then we get into the uncertainty performance domain and smack dab on top of risk. because uncertainty that matters is what risk management is all about. It's all about managing the uncertainty that could impact your project positively or negatively. The next one is measurement. Measurement cuts across all of those knowledge areas, but we'll peg it in cost and we'll put the general idea in monitoring and controlling. So my friends, when you boil it all down, you already have knowledge about this. We have the stakeholder domain, dealing with stakeholders, the team performance domain, dealing with keeping the team engaged, morale high, great leadership of the team. We have development approach and life cycle that deals with understanding cadence and approaches. We have the planning domain. I don't need to go into all the details. You know, we plan everything under the sun anyway in the world of the PMI. We have project work performance domain, project processes, balancing constraints, stuff you already know, just with a different wrapper and label. We have the delivery performance domain. We got to think about delivering value. We got to think about deliverables. We're going to think about quality and suboptimal outcomes. In other words, what happens if you arrive at a less than desired outcome? You got to pick yourself up and learn lessons and move on. That's what this is all about. We have measurement performance domain, what to measure. It's actually one of my favorite chapters in the 7th edition. And I like the part about measurement pitfalls, because a lot of times we might be measuring stuff that we actually have no business measuring. We're measuring the wrong stuff. Chapter 7 here really goes into it. 2.7 goes into it. And 2.8 is about uncertainty. Like I said, it's uncertainty that matters. Now, if you found this interesting and you want more, if you want to learn about serving with the 7th edition and you want to go through this entire series with my buddy Roy, because we have 8 hours of serving with the 7th, I'm going to put a link below. It's there in my Udemy class. So if you go to udemy.com/ElitePMP, you'll be able to find my training for the PMP exam, where I have a full section on nothing but the 7th with my buddy Roy. All right. Thank you for joining me today. If you got any questions or you want to check out more of our material, go on down to Praizion.com or just put a comment below if you're stuck. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you very much, my friends. All the very best, and bye for now.